Hello, I'm Ron Squire. Welcome to highlights of the 2026 Formula SimRacing World Championship. Round 3 is the Bahrain Grand Prix. 57 laps around the picturesque Sakhir circuit, the Bahrain Grand Prix for the better part of the last 2 decades has been the first main protocol for motorsport in the Middle East. With sweeping corners and hairpins, the main challenge for the drivers is brakes and the ability to ride the curbs, as well as crucial tyre management along with the searing track temperatures that plays a massive role, even at night. Both Mission 19 affiliated teams pulled out of the Bahrain Grand Prix for the race weekend, with team restructuring the main reason. Supernova driver Jansen Bins joins Terminal Esports as a temporary replacement for River Machete, who announced that he will not drive in the World Championship for the remainder of the season. Loic Mounier takes pole position for the first time this season and the very first for every conquest, just under a tenth from Jan Braxtok for Ottomali. Mark Schluter bounces back a bit to take third, whilst Peter Burlak continues his increasing form with fourth. ALMMV dropped the ball in qualifying with both the cars locking out row 3, Grankvist ahead of championship leader Lehu. Zolk is back after the Easter absence with 7th, whilst George Dalgianis takes 8th. Lucas Murdo dropped the ball a little bit with 9th, whilst Giuseppe Canzonieri is hoping to put the recent bad fortunes behind for Valley Esports to take up the top 10. Giuseppe Saracino returns as the Italian just misses out on the top 10 with no sign of teammate Christian Pascal for this race. 7 Arrows had a torrid time in qualifying, Will Stoughton in 13th with Amin Suisi in 15th, and as mentioned before, Jansen Bins joins Terminal Esports with no time set in qualifying, thus starting from the back. To the race start, the top 3 get a clean getaway as Schluter looks up on the inside of Mounier just as the Frenchman fends off Braxtok on the outside of turn 1 whilst Peter Burlak loses out to both ALMMVs. Further back, both Marza and Elex tangle with each other, but surprisingly with no damage, though both are now at the back. Schluter has a look up on the inside of Braxtok at turn 3, the world champion having better straight line speed, with Hungarian compensating the lack of speed with a corner-based setup. At the end of the opening lap, Mounier leads from Braxtok, Schluter, Grankvist, Lehu, Zooks, Burlak, Murdo, Zalgianis and Snowden. Sadly for Marza and Elex, they would tangle with each other again and the final corner at the end of the lap, with both cars now suffering from some degree of damage, both Hungarians retiring in the pits together. Further up the field, Petroglia makes a lunge at Van den Hudding at turn 3, but inadvertently causing a spin for both cars. Van den Hudding's race as a result was compromised and suffered performance as the race went on. The Dutchman will retire later on. Lap 4, Giuseppe Saracino holds up honours for Squire Nation Esports in Christian Pascal's absence and makes the most of it with a simple overtake on Will Snowden down the main straight to move up into 11th place, the Italian tracking down the top 10. Lap 5 and the battle for 9th is heated up with Canzonieri defending with all his might from Zalgianis, but the Greek proved too strong for the Valley Esports driver, with ground effects making up ground in the race. Further back on the same lap, Will Snowden's race was just getting from bad to worse, with the Terminal Esports of Jansen Bins overtaking the 7 Arrows for 13th at turns 4 and 5, a major improvement for the Luxembourg native. It's overtake o'clock on lap 6 as it is now Lucas Murdo's turn to move up a place, the Terminal hosting driver overtaking sister teammate Zolk for 6th. The battle for 9th would heat up once again on the same lap, Zalgianis losing out to Canzonieri at turn 3, the Italian once again in the ascendancy. But it would be another Italian to join the fray as Giuseppe Saracino is in touching distance of the top 10. Saracino would make his move on Zalgianis at turn 1 on lap 8. So on lap 10, as everyone jostles for position at the lower end of the field, it's all consistent up front. Loic Mounier remains in the top spot, but is not comfortable as Jans Braxtok breathes down the Frenchman's neck. Mark Schluter is holding on to 3rd, but must be wary of the ALMMVs behind. Lucas Murdo once again is Terminal's top man in 6th, with Zolk behind in 7th. Peter Burlak's race took a dive a little bit in the first few laps, but still remains in the top 8. Giuseppe Canzonieri is in 9th and looking to put behind the previous 2 races for Valley Esports, and Giuseppe Saracino holds on to 10th for Squire Nation Esports as the Italian pulls away from Zalgianis. Speaking of the Greek on lap 10, the ground effects driver's 11th place is under threat from a certain Jansen Bins. The Luxembourg driver attempted to overtake Zalgianis at turn 1, but the Greek holds firm. Bins would eventually overtake the ground effect driver on the outside of turn 3. Lap 11 and Saracino continues his upward form, making the move on Canzonieri for 9th at turn 1. The Valley Esports driver attempts to retake the position at turn 3, but the Italian outbroke himself, allowing Saracino to pull off into the distance. Lap 15, Elena Petroglia suffers her 3rd retirement in a row, the Italian losing the back end at turn 3 and slamming into the barrier hard, ending another disappointing race for Elk International. The first official stop was made on lap 15 with Canzonieri coming in for a fresh set of hards. The Italian rejoins at the back, 9 seconds behind Tucson. A few laps later, it would be the first of the leaders to make their stop as Jan Braxtok dives in from 2nd. The Ottomali driver rejoins in 10th, just behind Jansen Bins. Munier and Schluter would make their stops on lap 21, but for Schluter it was a major close call with Zolk in the pits just in front of the world champion. The German struggled to get out of his box, costing Schluter valuable time. Zooks makes the most of the situation as both he and Schluter rejoins in 9th and 11th, separated by Murno, whilst Munier rejoins in 6th as Grankvist leads the race. Grankvist's lead will only last for 2 laps before the Finn pits in on lap 23, surrendering the lead to Peter Burlak. Grankvist rejoins on the softs in 6th, just behind Munier. Braxok retakes the lead in the race as Burlak pits in on lap 25, the Ottomali driver just a couple of seconds in front of the surprise package in Giuseppe Saracino. Saracino pits on lap 26, the Italian rejoining in 10th, just in front of Will Snowden. At halfway distance, Braxok assumes the lead in the race after the first round of stops, with Lehoux breathing down his neck in second, the World Championship leader yet to make his stop. Grankvist keeps tabs in third with sister teammate Luc Munier behind him 4th. Lucas Murno has had a considerable gap to Mark Schluter in 5th. Zolk's pit stop didn't work out too well for the Hungarian in 7th. Peter Burlak managed to stabilise his race in 8th. Salagianis is back up into 9th, while Saracino keeps the top 10 hopes alive after his first stop. Lehoux's race would nosedive a bit from lap 29, the championship leader letting Grankvist through on the softs. And then on the next lap, letting through sister teammate Luc Munier into 3rd. Although Lehoux attempts to take back 3rd from Munier, the MV Conquest did not relent the position. On lap 30, Zolk's mixed race was summarised as the Ottomali driver spins out at turn 8, and as a consequence, loses both 8th and 9th to Saracino and Bintz. Zolk continued on for 2 more turns before going wide and spinning out at turn 10, slamming into the barriers and becoming retirement number 5 in Bahrain. And at the same corner, Alex Lehoux almost joined the Ottomali driver on the sidelines by losing the back end and only nudged the inside barrier with his right rear, but the championship leader was able to continue. Lap 34 and Peter Burlak's race is starting to come alive with a simple overtake on Lucas Murno at turn 1, the Croatian now up into 5th place. Murno pushing to get the position back but losing some focus whilst exiting turn 5, but was able to correct himself, the Brazilian now knowing that the world champion Mark Schluter is behind him and closing down. On the same lap, Saracino loses the back end and spins at turn 6, but was lucky not to hit any barriers or lose any positions. The Italian carries on in 8th. Lap 37 and Grankvist makes his second stop as Munier assumes the Finn's position. At the same time, both Lehoux and Murno also pits. Both ALMMV drivers rejoin in 5th and 7th, separated by Saracino, whilst Murno comes back out in 8th, a few seconds ahead of Bintz. Munier pits on the next lap from 2nd, rejoining in 5th behind Grankvist. Lap 39 and Braxok makes his second stop from the lead, giving Burlak the top spot once again. The Hungarian comes back out in 3rd, just in front of Grankvist. Sadly for Munier, his race ended on lap 40. The MV Conquest driver loses the back end going through turn 5, spinning off and hitting the barrier, losing his front wing and becoming retirement number 6 of the Grand Prix. Lap 41 and Peter Burlak pits in for the lead for most likely his final stop, surrendering the lead to Schluter as the Croatian rejoins in 5th, just in front of Murno. Lap 43 and Jansen Bintz is still proving his performance at Suzuka was only just a blip, the Luxembourg native overtaking Cancellieri down the main straight for 8th. Further up the field on lap 45, Peter Burlak makes a simple but brave move on the championship leader, the Croatian moving ahead of Lehoux for 4th at the first turn. As we approach the last 10 laps of the race, Janis Braxok on softs has the lead well cushioned by a 4-second gap from Mark Schluter. Jan Grankvist is not letting go of the front 2 pairing, with the Finn keeping tabs from 3rd. Peter Burlak and Alex Lehoux are at odds for 4th, with Lucas Murno entering the picture. Giuseppe Saracino holds on to 7th, despite the feeling that Jansen Bintz is closing down the Italian from 8th. Giuseppe Cancellieri holds on honours for Valley Esports in 9th, just 2 seconds ahead of Zalagianis in 10th. Lap 51 and another crucial battle for 9th spot nearly ends in disaster for both Cancellieri and Zalagianis. The Greek chasing down the Valley Esports driver down to turn 3, but the ground effect driver outbroke himself, nudging Cancellieri and causing both men to go off course. Luckily, both men were able to continue with 0 damage. Zalagianis takes 9th from Cancellieri as a result of the tangle, but the Greek gives the position back to Cancellieri a corner later. 2 laps later, the world champion Mark Schluter dispenses of Lucas Murno going down the main straight to take 5th from the Optimal hosting driver. A silent but exciting day in the office for the German. But the finish will get even more exciting as 2 laps goes by when Mark Schluter makes another crucial overtake, this time on the championship leader Alex Lehoux. The Frenchman doesn't make the overtake easy, but the German holds firm and holds 4th all the way to the finish line. Taking his first win this season, Janis Braxok wins under pressure and with conviction under the lights. Jan Grankvist has put Japan behind him with 2nd, whilst Peter Burlak takes 3rd, continuing the Croatian's brilliant form as of late. Mark Schluter still has some involvement in the title fights with 4th, whilst championship leader Alex Lehoux seemingly dumbfounded by the result in 5th. Lucas Murno continues to be Optimal's top dog with 6th, whilst Giuseppe Saracino takes 7th, giving Squire Nation Esports their second top 10 finish of the season. Janssen Bins takes 8th in his second appearance in the World Championship, whilst both Salgialis and Canzonieri rounds out the top 10. In the driver standings, Lahu still leads the title race despite the drop-off in Bahrain. Braxtock leaps up to second after his win at the expense of Mark Schluter, the world champion, now in third. Jan Granqvist pushed himself to the limit in Bahrain, the Finn taking 4th just ahead of both MV Conquest drivers. Will Snowden and Ami Suisi join each other in the top 20, whilst both Invictus drivers Mando Maza and Matt Tusen share 9th. In the constructor standings, there's very few changes to the table with no swapping amongst the top 3 teams. Optimali leaps up into 4th with 7 Arrows faltering a bit in Bahrain to take 5th. Invictus suffered their first DNF of the season, while Squire Asian Esports takes 7th, 7 points ahead of Valley Esports. Both Optimal Hosting and Optimal Esports secure their first points this season, sandwiching Mission 19 Vela 1 in both 9th and 11th. Whilst Elk International, Mission 19 Supernova and 7 Arrows Engineering have yet to get off the mark. The next race is the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, taking place at the Baku City Circuit on Sunday the 10th of May. You can watch that race live as it happens right here on our YouTube channel. Qualifying begins at 8:25pm GMT, with the race starting at 8:45pm GMT. In the meantime, you can join in our forums at formula-racing.net, as well as our Discord server for up-to-date information and join in on the community. The links are in the description below, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram and TikTok. We hope you enjoyed today's presentation. I'm Ron Squire, and join us for the next round of the 2026 Formula Sim Racing World Championship.